This is the last video for our biofeedback segment, and I just wanted to run through a couple of important tips for the Biofeedback Lab. So before you do this lab, please do not have very recently exercised or consumed caffeine, because it's going to influence the results and influence your ability to have any interaction here. So for your own benefit, try to abstain for minimum 2 hours, ideally 6 hours. Caffeine's half-life has been shown to be about 6 hours, and the recommended time from which you abstain is typically 6 hours before you do physiological measures, especially involving the heart. And so today we're going to be measuring heart rate in this lab. One last thing I'll mention is the lab manual, the lab guide, the procedure guide that you've been using has shown ECG being hooked up on a lead on an electrode on the wrist and 2 on the ankles. These are called limb leads, and they worked well in the old time face-to-face lab, the pre-COVID version, because there were mixed groups together, and it was very safe to just pull up this part of your shirt and pull up this little part of your pants on your legs and put this electrodes there. Now that you're in the privacy of your own home, I encourage you to try for this lab a different lead configuration, which will have them actually, this diagram shows a lead here on the ribs, but I actually recommend on the clavicle itself. What you want to do when you're trying to receive a signal from the heart is you don't want to accidentally put an electrode where a muscle is, because the muscle stands between the heart and you. And so if you're trying to measure heart, you don't want to be measuring muscle. And so again, we talked about interfering tissue between what you're trying to measure. So bone is a safe bet because there's no electrical signals emanating from that the way there are from muscles. So this diagram, unfortunately this is X'd out, but this is your ground would be on the clavicle here, your white would be on this clavicle over here, and your red lead is down here on the it's the last floating rib, and it should be on the rib bone and not on muscle. Those are those intercostal muscles in there. You could accidentally get between the bones and wind up on a muscle, which you don't want. So you're aiming for bone here, and what you'll find is typically the signal, the ECG signal, has a much flatter isoelectric line. So if you remember from the ECG lab, the isoelectric line is that line of data that around which is the flat part around which the data is moving, the R spikes and all that good stuff. So what happens with limb leads is that isoelectric line itself is often wavy. So the data you're trying to read is kind of going up and down and all around a wavy baseline, which makes it incredibly hard to do. So in this example, you'll have a much cleaner ECG record. So this is something you can play around with and also get comfortable putting on leads other than just on somebody's limbs.